Karen Jones was a woman who always thought she was right. She had short blonde hair cut in a bob style. She wore big sunglasses that cost a lot of money. Karen was 50 years old and liked to tell everyone what she thought. She did not care if her words hurt other people's feelings. On a bright sunny day, Karen decided to visit the royal palace with her daughter Emma. Emma was 16 years old and did not want to be there. She kept looking at her phone and sighing loudly. The sun was hot, and many people were at the palace that day. "Hurry up, Emma," Karen said in a loud voice. "We paid a lot of money for these tickets. I want to see everything." Emma rolled her eyes but followed her mother. Karen always talked too loud. Other tourists turned to look at them, but Karen did not notice or care. The royal palace was very old and very famous. Many tourists came from all over the world to see it. Outside the palace, royal guards stood in their red uniforms. They wore tall black hats made of bear fur. These guards were known for standing very still for hours. It was their job to guard the palace and also be part of the show for tourists. "Look at all these people," Karen complained. "How am I supposed to see anything with this crowd?" She pushed her way to the front, pulling Emma by the arm. Some people looked angry, but Karen ignored them. She thought she deserved to be in front because she had paid for her ticket. "Mom, you can't just push people," Emma said in a quiet voice. "Of course I can," Karen answered. "We came here to see the guards, not the backs of other tourist heads." When they got to the front, they saw a line of guards standing at attention. Next to one guard was a large black horse. The horse stood so still it almost looked like it was not real. Its black coat shined in the sun. The horse wore special gear that showed it belonged to the royal guards. Karen stared at the horse with her mouth open. The horse did not move at all. Not even its tail moved to swat flies. The guard next to it also stood perfectly still, looking straight ahead. "Emma, look at that horse statue," Karen said, pointing at the animal. "It looks so real. The people who made it did a very good job." Emma looked up from her phone. Her eyes got big when she saw what her mother was pointing at. "Mom, that's not a statue," Emma whispered. "That's a real horse. The guards trained them to stand still." Karen laughed loudly. "Don't be silly, Emma. No real horse can stand that still. It has to be a statue. See, it's not even breathing." A man standing nearby heard Karen. He was wearing a uniform that showed he worked as a guide at the palace. "Excuse me, Mom," the guide said politely. "Your daughter is right. That is a real horse. The royal horses are trained to stand very still during guard duty. They are very special animals." Karen's face turned a little red. She did not like being told she was wrong. Instead of listening, she shook her head. "No, I know what I'm looking at," she said firmly. "I've seen horses before. Real horses move around and make noise. That thing hasn't moved an inch since we got here. It's clearly a statue." Emma sighed and looked down at her phone again. She was used to her mother acting this way. When Karen thought she was right, no one could change her mind. "I will prove it to you," Karen said suddenly. She looked at the rope barrier that kept tourists away from the guards. "Just watch." Emma looked up from her phone with worry in her eyes. She knew that look on her mother's face. It was the look that always led to trouble. "Mom, whatever you're thinking, please don't," Emma begged. But Karen was already making her plan. Karen stood with her hands on her hips. She was sure she was right about the horse being a statue. She did not like when people told her she was wrong. The tour guide and her daughter, Emma, both said it was a real horse, but Karen did not believe them. "I will show everyone that it is just a statue," Karen said to Emma. "Then they will all see that I was right." Emma pulled on her mother's sleeve. "Mom, please don't do anything crazy. Those are royal guards. We could get in trouble." Karen waved her hand to dismiss Emma's worries. "Don't be silly. I just want to touch the statue to show everyone it's not real." Around them, other tourists were taking pictures of the guards and the horse. No one else seemed to think the horse was fake. Some people were now watching Karen because she was talking so loudly. "Look at it," Karen said, pointing at the horse again. "It has not moved even once. No real horse can stand that still for so long." The tour guide tried one more time to stop Karen. "Ma'am, please believe me. That is a real, living horse. The Royal Guard horses are trained for years to stand still like that. It's very impressive, but it is definitely alive." Karen shook her head. "If that's a real horse, then I'm the Queen of England." Some people in the crowd laughed at Karen's joke. This made her feel more sure of herself. She liked when people paid attention to her. "I'm going to prove it to all of you," Karen announced to the crowd. She looked at the rope barrier that kept tourists away from the guards. It was not very high. She could easily step over it. Emma saw what her mother was thinking. "Mom, no. The sign says to stay behind the rope. You can't go over there." "Watch me," Karen said with a smile. She was excited to show everyone that she was right. "I'll just touch it quickly to show it's made of plastic or whatever." The tour guide stepped forward. "Ma'am, I must ask you not to cross the barrier. It's against the rules, and it could be dangerous." Karen did not listen. She thought the rules were for other people, not for her. She looked around to see if any security guards were watching. When she didn't see any, she made her move. "Mom," Emma called out, but it was too late. Karen quickly stepped over the rope barrier. The tourists gasped. No one could believe what they were seeing. Karen walked with quick steps toward the horse and the guard. The guard standing next to the horse did not move, but his eyes watched Karen. He was trained not to react to tourists unless there was real danger. But no tourist had ever come this close before. Karen walked right up to the horse. She had a big smile on her face. She was sure she would touch cold metal or hard plastic. Then everyone would know she was right all along. "See, everyone. I'll show you it's just a statue," Karen called back to the crowd. Some people had their phones out now, recording what was happening. Emma covered her face with her hands. She could not watch. She knew her mother was about to make a big mistake. The horse stood very still as Karen got closer. Its dark eyes followed her, but Karen did not notice. She was too busy smiling at the crowd and preparing to prove her point. "Just one touch, and we'll all know the truth," Karen said as she reached out her hand toward the horse's leg. The tour guide called out one last warning. "Ma'am, please stop. That's a real horse." But Karen didn't listen. Her fingers were just inches away from the horse's leg now. The guard next to the horse tensed up, ready to act if needed. Emma peeked through her fingers. She could not believe her mother was really doing this. Other tourists watched in shock as Karen reached out to touch what she thought was a statue, but was actually a living, breathing Royal Guard horse. Karen's fingers moved closer and closer. "Time to prove I'm right," she said, not knowing what was about to happen next. Karen's finger touched the horse's leg. She expected to feel cold metal or hard plastic. Instead, she felt something warm and soft. The horse's skin twitched under her touch. For 1 second, nothing else happened. Karen stood with her mouth open in surprise. The crowd watched without making a sound. Emma peeked through her fingers, afraid of what might happen next. Then the horse moved. It was not a big move. The horse just shifted its weight and turned its head to look at Karen. But this small movement was enough to make Karen jump back. Her eyes grew wide with shock. "It moved," Karen shouted. The statue moved. The horse, now aware of Karen's presence, let out a soft snort. Its nostrils flared as it breathed out. Karen could see the warm breath in the cool air. "That's not a statue. That's a real horse," Karen cried. Her face turned red with embarrassment. All the people who had been watching now knew she was wrong. The guard next to the horse finally broke his still position. He stepped forward and put a hand on the horse's neck to keep it calm. "Ma'am," the guard said in a stern voice, "you need to step back behind the barrier now." Karen stood frozen in place. She could not believe what had just happened. The horse she was so sure was a statue was looking right at her. Its big brown eyes seemed to be judging her. I thought, Karen started to say, but she couldn't finish her sentence. For once in her life, she had no words. Two more guards appeared. They walked quickly toward Karen with serious faces. The crowd of tourists moved back to make way for them. "Mom, I told you it was real," Emma called from behind the rope. Her face was red with embarrassment too. "Now we're in trouble." The guards reached Karen. One of them took her by the arm. "Ma'am, you have broken the rules by crossing the barrier," the guard said. "You also touched one of the royal horses, which is not allowed. Please come with us." Karen nodded without speaking. She was still in shock. The guard led her back toward the rope barrier, where Emma waited with her hands on her hips. As Karen walked past the crowd, she heard people talking about her. "Did you see that? She thought it was a statue. What was she thinking? I got it all on video." Karen looked down at the ground. She could not meet anyone's eyes. This was one of the most embarrassing moments of her life, and people were taking videos of it. The guard helped Karen back over the rope barrier. Emma stood nearby, looking angry and embarrassed. "I told you, Mom," Emma said. "I told you it was a real horse." Karen nodded. "I know," she said quietly. "I should have listened to you." The guard who had brought Karen back stood in front of her. "Ma'am, I need to see your ID and ticket. Please, we need to fill out a report about this incident." Karen reached into her bag with shaking hands. She found her ID and ticket and gave them to the guard. She noticed that many people in the crowd were still watching her. Some had their phones out, recording everything. "Will I be in trouble?" Karen asked in a quiet voice. This was not like her normal, loud, confident way of speaking. "You broke the rules and disturbed the royal guard," the guard said. "Yes, there will be consequences. Please wait here while I call my supervisor." The guard stepped away to use his radio. Karen stood next to Emma, feeling smaller than she had ever felt before. "Mom, I can't believe you did that," Emma said. "It's so embarrassing." "I'm sorry," Karen said. "I really thought it was a statue. It was standing so still." "Everyone told you it wasn't," Emma reminded her. "The tour guide told you. I told you. But you never listened to anyone." Karen knew Emma was right. She always thought she knew best. She never listened to other people, even when they knew more than she did. The horse was now moving more, shifting its weight and swishing its tail. It was clearly alive. Karen wondered how she could have been so wrong. "The supervisor is coming," the guard said, returning to Karen and Emma. "He will decide what happens next." The supervisor arrived 5 minutes later. He was a tall man with a serious face and a neat uniform. He walked up to Karen and Emma with quick steps. The crowd of tourists was still watching, waiting to see what would happen next. "I am Captain Wilson," the supervisor said to Karen. "I understand you crossed the barrier and touched one of our horses." Karen nodded, looking at her feet. "Yes, sir. I thought it was a statue." Captain Wilson raised his eyebrows. "A statue? The Royal Guard horses are living animals, ma'am. They are very well trained, but they are not statues." "I know that now," Karen said in a quiet voice. Her face was still red with shame. "Mom never listens to anyone," Emma said. "I told her it was a real horse, but she wouldn't believe me." Captain Wilson looked at Emma, then back at Karen. "Ma'am, what you did was dangerous. The horses are trained, but they can still be startled. You could have been hurt, and you could have caused a serious incident." Karen nodded again. She could not argue with anything the captain was saying. "Please come with me to the security office," Captain Wilson said. "We need to fill out a report. Your daughter can come too." Karen and Emma followed Captain Wilson away from the crowd. Karen could hear people still talking about her as they walked away. She felt like everyone was looking at her and laughing. The security office was in a small building near the palace. Inside, there was a desk, some chairs, and a computer. Captain Wilson asked Karen to sit down while he prepared the report. "May I see your ID again, please?" he asked. Karen gave him her ID. Her hands were still shaking a little. Captain Wilson typed her information into the computer. "Now, can you tell me exactly what happened?" he asked. Karen explained how she had seen the horse standing so still that she thought it was a statue. She told him how she had not believed the tour guide or her daughter when they said it was real. "I don't know why I was so sure," Karen said. "I guess I just didn't think a real horse could stand that still." Captain Wilson nodded as he typed. "The Royal Guard horses go through years of training. Standing still is a big part of their job, but they are very much alive." "I know that now," Karen said again. "I'm sorry for causing trouble." Emma sat in a chair in the corner of the room, still looking at her phone. She seemed embarrassed to be there. "Mom, people are already posting videos online," Emma said, showing Karen her phone screen. "Look." Karen looked at Emma's phone and saw a video of herself touching the horse, and then jumping back in surprise. The video had already been shared many times. People were making fun of her in the comments. "Oh no," Karen said, feeling even more embarrassed. "Now everyone will see what I did." "Actions have consequences, ma'am," Captain Wilson said. "Breaking the rules at the Royal Palace is serious. There will be a fine of £200 for crossing the barrier and disturbing the Royal Guard." Karen's eyes widened. £200. That's a lot of money. "The rules are clearly posted," Captain Wilson said. "The barriers are there for a reason. We need to protect the horses, the guards, and the public." Karen nodded and reached for her purse. She knew she had no choice but to pay the fine. It was her own fault for not listening to others and for breaking the rules. "Can we still see the rest of the palace today?" Emma asked. "We paid for the full tour." Captain Wilson looked at Karen. "Yes, you can continue your visit after we finish here, but please stay behind all barriers and follow the rules." Karen nodded again. "I will. I promise." After paying the fine and signing some papers, Karen and Emma were free to go. As they left the security office, Karen felt ashamed of how she had acted. "I'm sorry I embarrassed you, Emma," Karen said. "And I'm sorry I didn't listen to you." Emma shrugged. "It's okay, Mom. But maybe next time you'll believe me when I tell you something." "I will try," Karen said. "I learned my lesson today." They walked back toward the palace tour route. Karen knew the day would be hard to forget, not just because of the fine she had to pay, but because of how foolish she had felt when she realized her mistake. The horse was not a statue. It never had been. Karen had been wrong, and now everyone knew it. Sarah walked through the thick forest, her boots crunching on fallen leaves. The morning sun barely reached through the dense trees. She had been searching for her missing brother Tom for 3 days now. Their small town of Pine Grove had never seen anything like this before. The forest grew darker as she went deeper. Strange sounds echoed around her. Birds she had never heard before called out from the branches above. Sarah held her map tighter and checked her compass again. Something was wrong. The compass needle kept spinning in circles. A cool breeze touched her face. It came from between 2 large rocks ahead. Sarah squeezed through the narrow gap and found herself looking down at something amazing. A hidden valley spread out below her, filled with trees that glowed with soft blue light. Flowers of colors she had never seen before dotted the ground. The air felt different here, lighter somehow. In the middle of the valley stood an old stone building. It looked like a library or a school, but it was covered in strange symbols that seemed to move when she looked at them. Sarah remembered Tom talking about finding something unusual in the forest. This had to be what he meant. She carefully made her way down the steep slope. The glowing trees cast weird shadows that seemed to follow her. When she reached the bottom, she saw footprints in the soft dirt. They looked fresh, and they matched Tom's hiking boots perfectly. The front door of the building was made of dark wood with a silver handle. It opened without a sound. Inside, rows of books filled tall shelves that reached up into darkness. But these were not normal books. Some had covers that shifted colors like oil on water. Others floated slightly above the shelves. A desk sat in the middle of the room. On it lay Tom's notebook, open to a page filled with his messy writing. Sarah picked it up with shaking hands and read. Day 3. The library holds secrets about our town. The books show me things I never knew were possible, but something else is here with me. I can hear it moving at night. If anyone finds this, do not. The writing stopped there. Drops of something dark stained the corner of the page. Sarah heard a soft sound behind her, like someone breathing. When she turned around, she saw shadows moving between the shelves. They had shapes that were almost human, but not quite. A book fell from a nearby shelf. When it hit the floor, it opened by itself. Pages flipped rapidly as if blown by wind, even though the air was still. The pages stopped on a picture of Pine Grove, but not how Sarah knew it. In this picture, the town was surrounded by a wall of blue light, and strange creatures walked its streets. Sarah heard the breathing sound again, closer now. She grabbed Tom's notebook and backed away toward the door. The shadows between the shelves grew darker and seemed to reach for her. She had found where Tom had gone, but now she needed to find a way to get him back. The door suddenly felt very far away. Sarah clutched the notebook to her chest and ran. Behind her, she heard something moving, following her between the shelves. She did not look back. Finding Tom would have to wait. First, she needed to escape and get help. But as she reached the door, she realized that getting help might not be simple. The town in that book had looked just like Pine Grove would look in 3 days' time. The town meeting hall was packed full. Everyone from Pine Grove had come after hearing about what Sarah found in the forest. Mayor Wilson stood at the front, his face pale as he looked at Tom's notebook. Old Mrs. Baker from the flower shop kept saying she had seen this coming. The baker, Mr. Jones, just shook his head. "We should have told them sooner," someone said from the back of the room. The crowd parted to let Elder Smith walk to the front. He was the oldest person in town, and he knew all its history. His white hair seemed to glow in the evening light coming through the windows. The library Sarah found was built by the first people who lived here, Elder Smith said. They were not like us. They knew how to do things that we would call magic. They protected our valley from dangerous things that lived in the dark places of the world. Sarah sat in the front row, still holding her brother's notebook. She watched as Elder Smith pulled an old book from his coat. It looked just like the ones in the hidden library. The cover sparkled with tiny lights that moved like stars. "The creatures Sarah saw in that picture will come to our town in 3 days," Elder Smith said. "They come every 100 years. The wall of blue light is supposed to keep them out, but the wall is failing. We need someone to go to the library and read the right books to fix it." But the shadows in the library took Tom, Sarah said. Everyone turned to look at her. How can anyone go back there? Elder Smith opened his book. The pages glowed softly. "Those shadows are guardians," he said. "They protect the library's secrets. But they only take people who read the wrong books." Tom must have found something he was not supposed to know. Sarah stood up. "Then we have to save him," she said. She held up Tom's notebook. "He left clues about what he found. Maybe we can use them." Mayor Wilson raised his hands for quiet as people started talking all at once. "We have 3 days," he said. "We need volunteers to go with Sarah to the library. We must find Tom and fix the wall, or those creatures will enter our town." 5 people raised their hands. Jack the hunter, who knew the forest better than anyone. Lisa from the school, who could read 3 languages. Mike and Sam, the twins who had lived in Pine Grove all their lives. And old Mrs. Baker, who surprised everyone by saying she used to help her grandmother protect the town. They would leave at dawn. Sarah stayed up all night reading Tom's notebook again and again. She found small drawings in the corners of pages. They showed symbols like the ones on the library walls. In the very back, Tom had drawn a map. It showed tunnels under the library that no one knew about. As the sun rose, Sarah met the others at the edge of town. They carried backpacks with food and water. Jack had his hunting knife. Lisa brought books about old languages. Mrs. Baker held a crystal that glowed like the trees in the hidden valley. They walked into the forest as the town watched. Sarah led them toward the gap between the rocks. Somewhere in that strange library, her brother was waiting, and in 3 days, Pine Grove would either be saved or changed forever by what they found there. The group reached the library as the sun touched the top of the valley. The glowing trees looked different in daylight. Their blue light was softer, almost sad. Mrs. Baker held up her crystal, and it pulsed with the same light as the trees. "These trees are connected to the wall that protects the town," she said. "When they look sad like this, it means the wall is getting weaker." Sarah showed everyone the map from Tom's notebook. The tunnels under the library spread out like spider webs. One tunnel led to a room marked with a star. Next to it, Tom had written the word important in big letters. They had to find a way into the tunnels first. Sarah remembered seeing a trap door behind one of the bookshelves, but they would have to get past the shadow guardians. Lisa stepped forward and pulled out one of her books. "These symbols on the walls are like a language," she said. "If we can read them right, maybe the guardians will let us pass." Jack kept his hand on his knife as they entered the library. The shadows moved between the shelves just like before. But this time, Sarah was ready. She walked to the desk where she had found Tom's notebook. More symbols were carved into the wood. Lisa studied the symbols carefully. She moved her finger over them as she read from her book. The shadows came closer, but they did not try to grab anyone. Lisa kept reading, and suddenly the symbols on the desk began to glow. The trapdoor appeared in the floor, opening by itself. Stone steps led down into darkness. Mrs. Baker's crystal gave them enough light to see. The twins, Mike and Sam, went first. Then Jack, then Lisa. Sarah and Mrs. Baker came last. The tunnel walls were covered in more symbols. Some of them moved, pointing the way like arrows. The air smelled old, like books that had not been opened for many years. Their footsteps echoed strangely. They followed Tom's map through many turns. Some tunnels were blocked by fallen stones. Others seemed to go on forever. The twins marked their path with chalk so they could find their way back. After what felt like hours, they reached a round room with 7 doors. Each door had different symbols above it. In the middle of the room stood a stone table. Items were laid out on it: a silver key, a glass ball, a piece of blue cloth, a wooden box, and an old ring. Sarah checked the map again. The star on it pointed to the door with symbols that looked like waves. But when Jack tried to open it, nothing happened. Lisa read the symbols above each door. "We have to choose the right item from the table," she said. "Each door tells a story. The story tells us what we need." Mrs. Baker stepped closer to the wave door. "I remember something my grandmother told me," she said. "The first people who built this place came here through a door of water." Sarah looked at the items on the table. The glass ball had something swirling inside it that looked like tiny waves. She picked it up carefully. The ball grew warm in her hands, and the door with wave symbols swung open. Through the doorway, they saw a large room filled with strange machines. Books floated in the air, pages turning by themselves. And there, sitting at a desk covered in papers, was Tom. He looked up as they entered, his eyes wide with surprise. "You should not have come," he said. "I found out the truth about our town, about what really lives behind the wall. And now the guardians will not let me leave until I finish what I started." Tom looked tired. Papers covered in his handwriting were spread all around him. Strange machines hummed and clicked in the background. The floating books cast moving shadows on the walls. "What do you mean?" Sarah asked. "What truth did you find?" Tom picked up one of the papers. "The creatures that come every 100 years," he said. "They are not trying to attack our town. They are trying to come home." Everyone was quiet. Mrs. Baker sat down heavily in a nearby chair. Her crystal flickered like it was responding to Tom's words. "The first people who built this library," Tom continued, "they did not build the wall to keep creatures out. They built it to keep themselves in. They were studying something dangerous, something they found in the dark places of the world." Lisa walked to one of the floating books. Its pages showed pictures of the wall around Pine Grove. But in these pictures, the wall was not keeping things out. It was keeping something inside. They changed themselves, Tom said. The first people used their magic to become something different, something that could fight the darkness they found. But they could not control it. So they built the wall to protect everyone else from what they had become. The twins looked at each other. Every 100 years, Mike said slowly. Yes, Tom nodded. That's how long the wall can last before it needs to be fixed. The creatures, the ones everyone fears, they are what is left of the first people. They come back to repair their own wall, to keep protecting us from what is inside. But if that's true, Sarah said, why did the Guardians take you? Tom stood up and walked to one of the machines. Because I found a way to break the wall, he said, to let them come home for good. But the Guardians think it is too dangerous. They say what is inside the wall has grown too strong. Jack moved closer to the machine Tom was standing by. So what is inside the wall? He asked. Tom touched the machine. It sparked with blue light. The same thing the first people found in the dark, he said. It has been growing for 1,000 years. If the wall breaks now, it will escape. That is why the Guardians would not let me leave. They wanted me to find a way to make the wall stronger instead. The next day and a half passed in a blur of work. Tom and Lisa read through floating books, learning the right symbols. Jack and the twins carried strange pieces of metal and crystal from the tunnels. Mrs. Baker talked to the Shadow Guardians in a language Sarah had never heard before. The creatures that were once the first people arrived early. They came through gaps in the air, their shapes changing as they moved. They did not look scary anymore. They looked sad, tired, like they had been wandering for too long. Sarah watched as Tom showed them what he had found. The creatures gathered around the machines, touching them with hands that were sometimes solid and sometimes smoke. They made sounds like wind through trees. They agree, Tom said. The wall has to be stronger. What is inside? What they found all those years ago. It feeds on magic. The more they used their power to fight it, the stronger it got. That is why they had to change themselves. Why they had to leave. The Shadow Guardians brought more books. Lisa and Mrs. Baker worked on reading the symbols that would strengthen the wall. Jack and the twins set up the machines in a circle. Strange light pulsed between them, like the blue glow of the trees outside. But something was wrong. Sarah felt it first, a shaking in the ground. The creatures felt it too. They moved faster, their shapes blurring. Tom ran to the machines, checking the symbols carved into their sides. It's fighting back, he shouted. It knows what we are trying to do. Dark shapes moved under the floor, not like the guardian shadows, but something else. Something hungry. The crystal in Mrs. Baker's hand grew cold and dark. We need more power, Lisa said. The wall has to be complete before it breaks free. The creatures gathered in the middle of the circle of machines. They joined hands, their forms becoming solid for a moment. Light poured from them into the machines. The Shadow Guardians spread out along the walls, their darkness pushing back against the shapes under the floor. Tom took Sarah's hand. We can help too, he said. Everyone who lives in Pine Grove, we are connected to this place, to the magic that has been here all along. Sarah felt it then, a warmth in her chest, like sunlight. She saw the others feel it too. They all joined hands, forming a circle around the creatures. Mrs. Baker's crystal blazed with light again. Power flowed through all of them, through the humans who had made their home here, through the creatures who had protected them for so long, through the Shadow Guardians who had kept the library's secrets. The machines hummed louder. Blue light shot up through the tunnels, through the library, into the sky above Pine Grove. Sarah felt the wall changing, growing stronger. The dark things under the floor screamed and pulled back. When it was over, the creatures began to fade. But they were not leaving. They were becoming part of the wall itself. Their magic would keep it strong forever now, not just for 100 years. Tom hugged his sister. The Shadow Guardians bowed and disappeared into the walls. Mrs. Baker said the crystal would be passed down in the town, a reminder of what happened here. They walked back through the tunnels together. The library would stay hidden, but now they knew it was there. Knew the truth about their town and the creatures who had protected it for so long. Outside, the trees had stopped glowing. They did not need to show their power anymore. The wall was strong enough now to last forever. Sarah looked back at the library one last time before they left the hidden valley. Pine Grove would never be quite the same, but maybe that was good. Sometimes the scariest things, the things people run from, are not what they seem. Sometimes they are just looking for a way to come home.